Welcome, everybody, to Your Soul as Well. My name is Vivia, and I'm so happy that you are here with me. I'm blessed by you. Thank you for being here with me. Thank you, those of you who have been on this journey with me since the beginning. Thank you for staying with me, staying the course, because I know I have been absent on my channel due to issues mainly with editing. However, I'm back, and we're going to talk astrology today. I'm so excited to talk astrology with you today. I love astrology. I love it. I love learning about it. I love sharing it with people. I love doing people's natal charts and explaining things to people, teaching people astrology. I am going to start talking about astrology regularly on my channel, however that will look. At this moment, I make no promises. I'm going to focus this very first video I'm doing on astrology on the shift that we are living through. The paradigm shift. We on Earth are living through a paradigm shift. Did you know that, beloved? Do you believe that? I truly do believe this. I don't just believe this because I study astrology and know astrology. I think I came in believing this. I think I'm one of the people, I really believe that I'm one of the people that came here to help herald this change, to help bring it about. At the very least, to be here during this massive shift, what is known as the shift of the ages, what has been prophesized through every tradition known to humankind, through every religion, is the changing of the ages. That's where I'd like to start this talk. I want to say I'm a little bit ill today. I mean, I've been a little bit sick for a while, and my voice is not as strong as it normally is, and I am a bit congested. So if you hear that congestion, if you hear that my voice is weak, that's why. I'm doing the best that I can. I appreciate your patience with me as I struggle through the sniffles. On a positive note, though, I have a new mic. I have a mic that my children bought me in 2020 for Mother's Day and that I have never used. So I'm using it. It's my inauguration of using it. It's the first time using the mic, and that I hope kind of offsets my weakened voice. And just know that I hold all of the best intentions for this reading. It might get heavy. We're going to talk about the paradigm shift. Pluto is really involved. Pluto's a heavyweight. So if you already didn't know, we are living through such significant changes. We will look back and we won't recognize our lives. Our lives will be so incredibly different. And we already see the rumblings around the world of this shift. We're seeing more and more people dissatisfied with their governments, the systems that are in place. We're seeing revolts and riots all over the world. And we're seeing a changing of the guard. Now, I really hold intention for this changing to be power back to the people, more power to the people, a rising in consciousness, a rising of humanity. Yeah, we're living through unprecedented times. As we go along, I'm going to show you different charts. And the first chart that I want to show you is the Sun and Pluto conjunction that happened on January 20th. I cast all of my charts for Vancouver, Canada, because that's where I am. If you know anything about astrology, you'll notice that I do not have any of the points here, the ascendant, descendant, midheaven, because I am not looking at the house placements and I'm not looking at the ascendant. I just want to see the planetary placements, the sky, what the sky looks like for all of us, but not necessarily the house placements. I just want to look at the planetary placements and what that is telling me. So I'm a Western tropical astrologer, and all of my work is based from this perspective. So the charts I will be showing you are cast in whole sign for Vancouver, Canada. So that's the West Coast. And like I said, it doesn't matter because what I'm looking at is the sky. I'm not looking at the ascendant or the other points that are formed because of the ascendant. And I'm going to start to do personal astrology that matters to you personally. And it'll be based on your rising sign. And when I start to do that, then of course, I'll make sure that your rising sign is here and we can look at all the houses. So that said, just remember that for the most part in this talk, I am dealing with mundane astrology. Mundane means the world astrology. right? It means the world astrology. And one thing to keep in mind is that stay out of fear. And when I go into points that seem heavy or drastic, I want you to remember one thing. This is the world astrology that I'm looking at. I'm looking at what we're experiencing as a collective. I'm not looking at your individual chart. I'm not looking at where these planets lie in your chart and what might possibly happen for you in your life. That is not what I'm looking at. How this astrology will affect you, it depends upon you and your own birth chart. And although extreme things are happening in the world, it doesn't mean that that has to be in your life. One thing I want everyone listening to this to remember is that you are the person in control of your life, not any external event. And that just because something extreme is happening in the world, it doesn't mean it has to be extreme in your world. Okay, so that's the first thing. And the other thing that I want to mention right now off of the bat is that I know myself, and I know that this might get kind of deep and it might get intense. So if you are in a state right now where you can't handle that, then maybe don't listen to this. This is my warning right now, my trigger warning. Okay? I'm just going to leave that there. I'm going to leave that there for you. You do what you want with that. And just make sure to take care of yourself. You're responsible for taking care of yourself. So the first one I will start with is this date here, January 20th of this year, when the sun conjuncted Pluto right here. See, 29 minutes and 59 seconds of Capricorn. So this is called the anaretic degree. It's the last and final moment that a planet is in any sign. And then the next one is, well, 30 degrees, which is actually 0 degrees, and the start of the new sign. And this shows, what this shows, let's just break down archetypes here. Let's talk archetype, because that's what I talk. I talk archetype. I love archetype. I love archetypal energy. I love energy. I'm just, I guess, an energy junkie. I don't know. There's a lot of energy here in Capricorn. Do you see that? This glyph here. So another thing, glyph, sign, symbol, I use those words interchangeably. They are all the same thing, all right? This glyph is Mercury. This glyph is Mars. This glyph is the Sun, and this glyph is Pluto. This is a stellium. It's a concentration of energy. It usually is 3 or more planets in one sign, and the sign is Capricorn. So what is Capricorn? All of the archetypes, all of the signs, all of the planets, all of these, they all represent so many things, not just one thing. Capricorn represents, amongst other things, the institutions, the governments, brick and mortar buildings. It represents also building. It builds hierarchies. It likes resources. It consolidates resources. Capricorn is stable and reliable. It's predictable. It's about institutions and corporate power and corporation and amalgamation of resources underneath umbrellas like that, or the old school. I'll use that terminology, the old school. Of course, Capricorn also represents wisdom. It represents the past. Capricorn, very ambitious and goal-oriented. It likes to be used. It likes function. It likes purpose. Capricorn, being an earth sign, doesn't like change. It likes to be solid. It likes prestige and power and status. Its natural house is up here in the 10th house here. And the 10th house is the most visible house. The 10th house is a house that recognizes those things and appreciates those things. Being seen, status, those things are important, that ambition. Capricorn is responsible. It likes to endure. It's patience. It's committed. It's very conventional, serious, likes business, likes to be self-controlled. It can be inhibited because it is ruled here by Saturn, and Saturn, it constricts and inhibits. Saturn in this chart is right here in Pisces at 5 degrees here. And Saturn is the archetype that lends this structure here to Capricorn. Saturn in a chart can represent elderly people, authoritative people. The authority in the mundane chart definitely represents the authoritative structures. It's the builder here that builds consistently over time. It represents commitment, longevity, and restriction. Saturn is where we are restricted, and it brings restriction. But why it does that is because it wants us to master wherever it is. From my point of view, there is nothing good or bad about astrology because it's just a point of view. They have characteristics, right? They have qualities. All the planets, all the signs. Some of them can be seen as negative. Some of them can be seen as positive, but that's a perception because what is one person's garbage is another person's treasure. And that very much applies to astrology. And also the other thing is that from a very high vantage, from a very spiritual point of view, there is no right or wrong and there is no good or bad. It's all working for our betterment. It's all working for our highest good. It's all working for what I believe is our soul development. And that's the way I approach astrology. So when Saturn comes in, as I've already said, and tries to restrict, it's because Saturn wants you to discipline. Saturn wants you to step up. Saturn wants you to become a master of whatever domain it's in your chart. And so this Saturn that restricts and constricts and puts a boundary here on Capricorn is also the reason why Capricorn is so disciplined. Where other signs are not that disciplined, Capricorn is disciplined. It's the area of your chart, because you have Capricorn somewhere, it's the area of your chart where you sometimes lack, depending on if there's a planet in it and what planet is, where you have to learn discipline or you are already naturally disciplined. As I said, these are the structures here, and this sun and this Pluto being here in this structure, it's symbolic. And another thing about astrology, I really have the stance this astrology is the oldest science and very accurate. But if we just take a look at astrology as a language of symbology, which is fine if that's the way you want to perceive this, then this symbol here, because this is the sun, and the sun is, in mundane astrology, leadership, and also the sun illuminates, right? It's the point of consciousness. And Pluto is the planet, it's the destroyer planet. It destroys, it excavates, it wants to find the truth. It wants to dig it up. It's known in mythology as the god of the underworld. And the sun is here at 29 degrees, shining light here on Pluto. Symbolically, what this tells me is that this sun is shining a light on corruption, because that's what Pluto does. Pluto excavates for the truth. It wants to know the truth. And this sun is showing us what is going on beneath the surface. What kinds of things can we expect to see being highlighted or illuminated in these structures that have been built, right? These structures that maybe some of them aren't serving us anymore. So that's what it's doing here. And this is setting off a cycle. And now why this is so important, because so there's so many things right now that are happening that are so rare. Really, really rare. These things are rare. Like Pluto is at the anaretic degree, 29 degrees here of Capricorn. It's here in conjunction with the sun. And remember that the anaretic degree is a point of crisis, or at least it can be. And then the next thing that happens is, so this is the sun coming in here, right? And it's illuminating the darkness, the shadow, whatever is there that is to be, brought to the surface, illuminated, highlighted, shown to us in our world, in our structures, in the power, in institutions that have been built around us, in the old order, right? The next thing that happens is the sun. You see that first here at this conjunction happened on Saturday in Pacific time on January 20th at 5:43 in the morning. And then by 6:07, so, just a few minutes later, really, the sun moves into Aquarius. They're still in conjunction, but they're in an out of sign conjunction, but they're still in conjunction. And then the next thing that happens is that Pluto, now the chart is moved because I'm basing all of these on where I live here in Vancouver. So this is still the same sky. It's just the time that has changed. So we went from We went from the sun being conjunct here, the sun and Pluto being conjunct at 29 degrees, the sun moving into Aquarius, and then Pluto here, following right behind it and conjuncting it again. So now we went from a cycle of these both being conjunct at 29 degrees of Capricorn, the old order, the old structures, institutions that have been built around us, hierarchy, top-down institutions, control, right? And into Aquarius, the archetype of Aquarius. They're in a conjunction now in the archetype of Aquarius. The symbology of Aquarius deals with humanity. It deals with humanity. It's the archetype of the collective. Aquarius wants freedom. It values individuality. Aquarius represents it is progressive, electricity. It is inventive through the sky. Domain over that's one science. That Aquarius has domain over mind. It's an air sign. It has domain. It can be unpredictable. Electricity. And it can be detached because it's air. The glyph, even look at the symbology of this glyph. The glyph of Aquarius represents the water which flows from the vessel of the water bearer, because the water bearer is Aquarius. But in symbolic terms, these lines represent the electric energy, electricity, which Uranus has rulership over. Aquarius in modern astrology is ruled by Uranus over here, which is currently in Taurus, currently retrograde in Taurus as of this date, January 20th. Now, Uranus as well represents the future. It represents electricity. It represents electric thought. It's something important to observe about this glyph because it helps us understand Aquarius better. This glyph does not touch itself. These two lines do not touch itself. And that really represents the detachment that Aquarius comes with. Being detached, being the observer is important here. This is always the message I get. And symbolically, these rigid, unbroken lines, they represent electric energy, universal thought, and the wisdom of the future. Because you see, if Capricorn is our stable, built past, Aquarius is our future. So now these planets moving from the last degree of Capricorn together into Aquarius together. This is not an everyday thing. And that is setting the motion forward for what we are moving into. It's going to be a fast year as well. Starts with Mercury being in forward motion, in direct motion, the first. Okay. And then, so then this is, if the sun conjunct Pluto in Capricorn at the last degree of Capricorn, highlighting the end of an era and showing us everywhere we need to change in our own personal lives, but as well as what is happening on the world front. And then here, this Pluto conjuncting the sun is showing us how to move into the future, how to transform our future, how to transform into our future, how to be our best selves, because Pluto rules over transformation. It rules over metamorphosis. It rules, yes, the underground, but in the collective, it rules the collective, actually. It's one of the rulers of the collective. It's more so the collective psyche, the underpinnings of our actions, the psychology, the urges, our obsessions. That's Pluto's domain. And now Pluto is here conjuncting the sun, and it's an omen for our future that Pluto and the sun moving together into Aquarius is like pushing us forward into the future. Now, Pluto, keep in mind that Pluto is going to move back one more time into Capricorn. But this, to me, this Pluto in Aquarius and this sun together is spotlighting. This is showing on the world stage leadership, power and control. What needs to be seen? What needs to be broken down? What needs to be transformed for the betterment of humanity? That's what this is showing me right here. It's showing me this particular cycle is an annular cycle. One of the reasons why this sun conjunct Pluto is so important is that because this is the last time it's going to happen in anybody's life. The sun will not conjunct Pluto ever again in Capricorn. And it's very telling that it's at the 29 degrees, right? Very telling, because 29 degrees is the last It's the crisis point. Now, Pluto returns back to here in May. It goes retrograde. But anyways, at this point, this sun is highlighting all of those things for us. It's showing all those things now. And at this point, it's setting off a new paradigm. It's one of the first key things, in my opinion, that sets off this new paradigm for us. This Pluto conjunct the sun in this humanitarian sign of Aquarius that wants the betterment for all of humanity. It's like this ideology that every child should be fed, nobody should be in war, and that we all deserve a certain level of safety and life and being provided for. And that's just our basic human, fundamental requirements to live. And that's the symbology here of this Aquarian archetype. It's the reason too, I believe, that it's so science focused, because that science is about moving humanity forward, moving us forward into our future lives of whatever that means for us, in terms of our evolvement, in terms of the technology coming through. And some people are afraid of this. And I know that there's a lot of things that we can talk about. Like, we can talk about when Pluto first entered Aquarius, which would have been last year. So Pluto first entered Aquarius March of 2023, around the 22nd, 23rd. And then it stayed there until June 10th, about June 10th. Now, go back to your life and try to see what was happening there, because that could be an indication of the things that will start to happen in your life. If anything significant or drastic happened, if anything, it could be psychological, it could have been internal, it could have been even subtle if it was a psychological thing. But on the world scene, what we saw the explosion of AI. It had already happened, right? At the end of 2022 is when ChatGPT was launched. But in this time period last year, March till June, we saw an explosion of AI, particularly in the generative AI for visual graphics, all right? Lots of talk on the scene, lots of talk about AI being sentient. Maybe some of you will recall that. When Pluto moves back in, I guess there's a lot of fear around this, fear around new technology and fear around society changing. And I do agree that we have to be careful with this. But one of the things I think with Pluto moving through Aquarius is, I think that it might just be the rise and fall of the machine. Like, look at and what I mean by that, I'll come back to that. Look at what happened when Pluto went through Capricorn. When Pluto first entered Capricorn in 2008, we had the beginning of the collapse of the financial, which I don't think is done at all. And I think that Pluto going through Aquarius is going to, because the thing about Aquarius is Aquarius and Pluto together equals disruptive technology. If you want to see, I think we're going to see more things, definitely more anarchy, definitely more riots, definitely more things like that, like just the unsettling of the people, because this is Pluto in Aquarius. This is Pluto. Pluto is not necessarily an easy planet. It does dig things up, right? And then Aquarius is humanity. But back to the finances, back to the beginning of 2008, when the housing market bubble crashed in the US, the collapse of the financial market, so the start of them, the bailouts, all of this, the insolvencies, right? All that started in 2008. It was the recession of 2008. That started when Pluto entered Capricorn. And this whole time that Pluto has been here in Capricorn, it's been slowly eroding and transforming for the purpose of transformation, any of those structures that didn't work, showing us and exposing us the corruption, the levels of deceit in our governments, in our financial institutions. And it is going through and destroying that. But remember, it's for the betterment. It's for our evolvement. Always remember, Pluto is very linked to your soul. It's very linked to your soul's evolution. Like I said already, to the collective. So now when it's going to go in, so at as a planet, especially the outer planets, this is why they're so powerful. The inner planets, the personal planets, they relate more to you and I, to all of us at a personal level. They help us understand archetypal imagery within our own constitution, our own psyches and whatnot, our own minds, our own beings. They help us to understand how we relate to other humans. It's a language that helps us explain it. Let's put it that way. Now, the outer planets, they move really slowly. Their orbits are very, very large and very far from the sun. And so their movement is slow. And Pluto is slow. Pluto is the slowest. That makes their impact that much more profound. That makes their impact that much stronger because it stays in one area of your chart that much longer. Where the sun goes through, I mean, the moon is the fastest, right? In 1 month, it goes all around the chart. This moon here will go all around the chart in 1 month. The sun takes a year, right? But Pluto is the longest. So that means it's going to be in Aquarius for 20 years. I think from the beginning to the end, when it dips back and forth, it ends up being closer to 21 years, but still 2 decades. And that in those 2 decades, it's going to do to Aquarius what it did to Capricorn. And at the end of Capricorn, we saw the annihilation of some of these structures that had been built over time. And now remember, Pluto only wants to transform what doesn't work. Pluto, if it's working for you, it's like, yeah, that's fine. But it brings up to the surface the things that you're not willing to see, the things that you want to ignore, the things that, you'd rather just not deal with. But Pluto's power, it's going to sit here in this house, wherever it is in your chart, and it's going to sit here for the collective in Aquarius for 20 years. And at the end of 20 years, that's why I say it's the rise and fall of the machine. I think we're going to have an explosion of technology, especially since Uranus here is involved. And I'm going to get to that in a minute, okay? But what I see going is the same thing here. Like as it got to the end of Capricorn, it really, really started to expose things, to expose a lot of things that people hadn't seen before. Now, when I believe towards the end, this is going to be like at the end of, March of 2043 is when Pluto finally leaves. So those last few years of Pluto in Aquarius is when we're going to see if there's deception or corruption in science. I mean, it's going to happen the whole time. It's a journey, it's progress. But towards the end, going back to this point that I'm saying, if there's any thing that is not for humanity's highest good with machinery or AI, by the time that Pluto gets to the end of Aquarius, it will have shown us this. It will have hopefully deconstructed this for us, right? And it's not Pluto doing it. We have to do that. We have to do that. We have to be accountable. We have to take matters into our own hands and make sure that any technology that's being devised is being devised for humanity's better good. It's being devised ethically, right? Is that right? Did I say that right? Because another thing with Pluto wants truth. It wants depth and it wants truth. It cares not for superficiality. It's like Pluto doesn't want to just skim the surface of something. It's not okay with that. It's not comfortable with that, actually. What it wants is depth and it wants integrity. It wants to hold you to integrity. And that's what it will do in Aquarius. And that's what it will do with any type of automated systems. And what I see is, I see freedom here for humanity through this, because Aquarius is the sign and the archetype of freedom. That's what Aquarius lives for and strives for. And Pluto going through this is going to help us construct this over 20 years. It's not going to be an easy journey, and I will not lie to you about this. Pluto is not easy. Pluto can be easier if you take things in stride and you do not resist the change. Now, that's what's going to be difficult because Aquarius is a fixed sign, and Aquarius likes to hold on being a fixed sign. But it is air, so it can change, and it can go so many ways. And that's the thing, and that we don't know where it's going to go. We can give you these star maps and we can look at the energy. I would like to show you something else I saw here in this chart. At this moment, it actually happened here too. Okay, when Pluto's here, making its conjunction, its last conjunction in Capricorn, look at this chart. This south node in Aries is making a kite aspect. It involves Saturn, the north node conjuncting Chiron, and the moon. The moon is a bit out of, it's out of sign, which I still consider applicable in modern day astrology. If you're a traditional astrologer, you might not consider that an aspect, but I do consider this an aspect. And this is a kite formation. Any type of major configuration in a chart deals with our psychology. That's how I learned this. And astrology is complex. There might be other definitions for this. And please, if you know some, let me know. I don't know everything. But a kite, it involves these planets, and this is the apex of the kite, the south node in Libra. It could be called also, I've heard it called the peak planet, or it's the tension ruler, because there's an opposition here, right? And then there's these other planets involved. This is at the 29 degrees, and then it also is at the 0 degrees of Aquarius. So this one is even stronger because the moon is now in aspect. So we're going to read it off of this one. So this south node here in Libra is the apex, and that's like the energy is here, and there's tension between definitely Chiron. So Chiron in the north node. So the north node is pushing us into the direction that we want to move. It's in Aries, and it is ruled by this planet here, Mars, and that is actually exalted here in Capricorn. At the time of this kite formation, the rulership over both Chiron and the north node are here in Mars, all right, and the moon and Saturn. So the moon in mundane astrology represents the people. The north node represents the forward movement. Chiron is known to be, by most people's standards, the point of healing, the wounded healer point. There are other definitions for Chiron. I'm just going to stick with that one for now. Saturn is here, and Saturn can represent the authority figures, the known structure, the past, discipline, commitment, all those things, but the authority figure in this chart in mundane astrology. And here it's also rules and regulation, because that's what Saturn rules over. Now, and here's the south node. And it's like the south node is, all this energy is pointing here to the south node, and the patterns, it's like asking us to look at, I almost see this like asking us to look at the past, and it's in Libra, and Libra is about harmony and balance and equanimity and peace. Libra wants peace. And look at what's happening in the world right now with all the war, right? And one thing too about this north node right now, conjunct Chiron, because Chiron wants healing. Chiron wants us to heal the wound, like healing the wound of the war, the endless wars on earth. That's how I see this. And it's involved here with the people, and it's involved here with the authority. And over here, this Mars, I want to show you one thing about Mars that's important to understand right now, about anything in Aries right now and anything that has Mars rulership, which is also Scorpio here, because Scorpio is one of the rulers of Scorpio is Mars, the ancient ruler. I also consider Pluto to be Scorpio's ruler, because Pluto is Scorpio's modern day ruler. But let's look at this. Let's go back to November 17th, 2023. And the reason why we're going back to this is because we want to go back to the synodic cycle of Mars that started this day. Do you see how Mars is at 25 degrees, 36 minutes of Scorpio, and as is the Sun at 25 degrees, 36 minutes of Scorpio? They're both in a conjunction here, which means to be together in the sky at the same time, in the same place in the sky at the same time. And it's in Scorpio, ruled by Mars, where the North Node is. This was in just a few months ago. Now, this set off a 2-year cycle. This cycle of Mars doesn't change until the beginning of 2026. And so this is the energy of this Mars cycle that we are currently in. This Mars cycle is in this Scorpio here. It's in Scorpio, which on the polarity axis of the astrological wheel deals with life and death cycles, as does Pluto, because Pluto is the modern day ruler of this. It deals with life and death cycles. It deals with a lot of things. That's the one I'm touching on right now. This is very much indicative of the next 2 years of the world, because it's very indicative of the wars that we are in, the wars that are being started, and the wars that will start from this point. That's the Mars cycle that we're in. Now, when we go back to here, this Mars is in that cycle. It's in that scorpionic cycle of the life and death, rebirth, transformation, metamorphosis process. And right here, this North Node conjunct Chiron in Aries is being ruled by that. And Mars is very strong right now because Mars is exalted in Capricorn. So we're being faced, all of us, to look at the wars, the death, the destruction, and look how many people are standing up. Look how many countries have gone to the Hague. Am I saying that right? In protest to what is happening in our world. Look at how much it's putting into our face who we are. And this is the pattern and the configuration in the sky the moment that Pluto and the Sun are conjunct. And I think that's very telling. The next thing I want to point out is the Aries solar